Good to go?
Yep.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Troutdale Planning Commission for Wednesday, July 15th, 2020. And if we could have roll call, please.
Yep. Commissioner Whitman, Vice Chair Wadilla,
Here.
okay. Commissioner Prickett,
Here.
Commissioner Wilcox,
Here.
Chair Stephenson,
Here.
Commissioner Glantz,
Here.
Commissioner Mamone.
Here.
Okay, we have quorum.
Okay. With that, at this time, I would like to ask everyone to stand for Pledge of Allegiance, those of us in the Kellogg room. And Commissioner Wadilla will be leading us this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Is there any public wishing to speak on a non-agenda item this evening? Okay. And any call-ins, any?
No, I believe the folks who are in attendance here and in addition on the call will be here for the public hearing component of the meeting.
Okay. With that, we will move to minutes. Did everyone receive a copy of the minutes from the June 17th meeting? And are there any corrections?
One addition.
Okay. Commissioner Wilcox, please.
Okay, on page 6, the third paragraph from the top, it starts with Mr. Wilcox. And I was quoting from the Public Works report on that application, where it says the applicant will be required to cure any existing defects. That makes it sound like it's defects in general, but the rest of the quote was defects in the public sidewalk on the street frontage. So I'd like to have the rest of that added.
In the public sidewalk or the street frontage?
Right.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Anything else?
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any corrections, deletions, comments? No? Okay. Entertain a motion.
I move that we accept minutes for Wednesday's meeting on June 17th, 2020.
As edited.
Oh,
Sorry.
as edited, excuse me. Thank you, Sandy.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes of Wednesday, June 17th, 2020 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, that carries. Okay, moving on to the big event. And tonight we have a public hearing, case file 75-04, text amendment, storage facilities. It's a development code text amendment. This is a type 4 hearing. Pardon me? Sure. Better? Do I need to repeat that? Okay. And this is a type 4 hearing. And before we open the public hearing, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Planning Commission, the procedure we'll be following for the hearing this evening. Planning Commission is an appointed 7-member volunteer body of Troutdale citizens. Members of the Planning Commission are Troutdale residents who have been appointed by the City Council. They serve 4-year terms. They are strictly volunteers and receive no pay for their services. Planning Commission serves as a citizen committee for the review of land use applications and various land use related matters within the city. Items which the Planning Commission consider include uses of land, subdivisions, major variances, land use policy plans, and development regulations. For some land use applications, the Planning Commission makes the final decision. For other applications, they are simply making a recommendation to the City Council, who renders the final decision. Tonight's hearing will be a legislative hearing. And at the conclusion of tonight's hearing and deliberations, the Planning Commission will either continue this hearing for a further public hearing or forward the Planning Commission recommendations to the City Council, who makes the final decision. And before we open the hearing, I want to go through and state that staff will present their report, which includes applicable criteria and standards for the matter under consideration in the land use application. All testimony and evidence should be directed towards these criteria. If you believe that any other criteria in the Comprehensive Plan Development Code or other city land use regulations apply, you must identify these criteria and explain why they apply to the decision. Planning Commission will accept public testimony relating to the application. The applicant is allowed to speak first, followed by proponents, then by opponents, and then by any parties neutral to the application. An opportunity will be provided to anyone testifying to clarify any issues raised. All issues raised by a participant during the public hearing must be sufficiently clear and specific to allow the Planning Commission and other parties an opportunity to respond to those issues. Failure to raise an issue during this public hearing may invalidate a future appeal based on that issue. Prior to closing the public hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony regarding the application. The Planning Commission must grant the request either by continuing the public hearing to a future date or by leaving the record open for at least 7 days to admit only that specific additional written evidence or testimony. If the record is left open for the additional written evidence or testimony, any participant may file a written request for an opportunity to respond to new evidence submitted during the period the record was left open. If such a request is filed, the Planning Commission shall reopen the record to allow any person to raise new issues which relate to the new evidence, testimony, or criteria for decision making. And I want to remind everyone, if you are testifying, please state your name and address for the record and speak clearly so that the transcriptionists can get everything down. Okay, and with that, last thing before I open the hearing, I just want to know if there's any, anyone has any conflict of interest. It's a type 4 hearing, so communication is not forbidden. It would just be if we have a conflict of interest with the applicant, who happens to be staff. No, not tonight. Any conflicts? Challenges? Okay, great. Okay, and with that, we will now open the public hearing for case file 7504, text amendments, Development Code text amendment, type 4 hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. And just for those of you watching from home, the people who are speaking, we are just taking the face masks off while we speak. Others will have it on while they're not. It will help with the recording and the enunciation. So we are still all 6 feet apart. So we beg your discretion there. I'm going to share my screen here, and unlike previous case files where we typically have a PowerPoint, I am going to refer largely to your packet, so you will be able to follow along. The packet will contain that information. We will also have it up here on the screen for you as well. And before we get started, I just want to confirm with folks at home, can you all see a PDF document open saying staff report planning commission hearing? Everything can be a thumbs up, so we'll continue on. Thank you. Okay, so this is a matter that has been before the planning commission for discussion, so this should not come completely on the right field for you. This is in regards to, looking at a development code amendment, a text amendment to the development code to consider and clarify the concept of storage, but also the introduction of storage facilities to the development code. So again, the requests tonight are to establish a storage facility and an accessory storage definition, to consider allowing storage facilities as a conditional use in the light industrial zoning district, to modify the definition of what a warehouse is, to distinguish that, and to provide clarity and context for those definitions throughout the code. The applicable criteria that you'll be looking at, section 2.065 is in the development code that just speaks to the type 4 procedure that Mr. Stephenson just outlined. The actual decision criteria, which we will go over in greater detail, is in section 6.1100. Staff recommendation will be an approval for it. As mentioned, we are the applicant for it, but we do recommend approval for it. And again, any decision you make here tonight or later on is a recommendation ultimately to City Council. On the background of it, this has been an issue that has come on and off again before the city over several years. Currently, by our count, there are 3 what we call typical mini warehouse storage facilities, purpose-built storage facilities in Troutdale that were developed. One is located in a general commercial district off Stark Street, kind of on the south side of the city. One is located in the town center area, next to the Harvest Christian Church, which is in a mixed office housing zoning district. And then the third one, and actually this application would be relevant for the third one, is located in the light industrial zoning district off Harlow Road over by the Troutdale Airport, the east end of the airport. And just for clarification's sake, for light industrial zoning district, these are what we would call kind of transitory type industries that separate it from what we call general industrial zoning districts. These are the Amazons, the FedExes, the larger truck facilities, and a lot of these larger industrial type uses. Light industrial is seen kind of as a bridge to that. The areas in the city that are light industrial include the Harlow Road properties, of which we've seen a lot of development very recently. Some of the properties owned by the Portland at the airport, and then the I-84 Corporate Center, which is at the location where Marine Drive hits I-84. It's a business park there. So really, actually, in that case, a mix of some commercial, but also some limited industrial use in that location. That's the affected areas we're talking about. The light industrial is a very small, from a geographic sense, scaled zoning district. There's only about 30 properties that are actually affected by, that have light industrial zoning, and 30 properties that would be affected by this decision if it moves forth as presented. So what's happened over the past few years is there has been effectively some concern about the proliferation of storage facilities, and mainly the concern about the land use aspects of it, given that they have historically, by design, taken up a lot of space, but have not typically generated a lot of employment. What happens before, as far as how Troutdale has to consider its industrial land allocation, is we have to play in the same sandbox that Metro tells us to play in, whether we like it or not. But the truth is that Metro has designated our industrial area, basically anything north of I-84, to be an economic and job center as part of their regional framework plan. Meaning that with the amount of finite industrial land that is in the metro region, that land should typically be deferred and be oriented to businesses that generate a lot of job creation. And again, this is a concept that has been around now for 25 years. And really the last time we have seriously looked at this particular land use, the idea of a storage or self-storage facility, there were certain things in place that aren't in place today. We did not have Amazon, for instance. Amazon was an industrial property. It came in and it has generated, it's now our largest employer. It has generated 2,500 jobs. We now have we will soon be having CNS grocery warehousing, also an industrial property. That's going to generate 400 to 500 new jobs. We had FedEx at the time, and FedEx has since expanded since that last conversation. And FedEx itself employs about 900 year-round people, up to 1,200 during the holiday season. All that to say is that Troutdale has had economic success in recruiting jobs and filling up some of the industrial capacity. But all of those situations occurred in general industrial property. So these are, what we're talking about tonight are the peripheral light industrial properties along the freeway that basically because of the size of their property only have so much capacity. But what we have found is these types of industries also are very heavily reliant not only on transportation and logistical support, but also need support for storage. And not just the businesses themselves, but also contractors or businesses that are affiliated with them or do business with them often find a need to have storage located nearby. And storage, in this case, is kind of broadly defined. But we will go ahead and jump into that definition. But I did want to provide that context and lay out that scenario because that's going to have an impact on how you view your decision criteria. So we'll harken back on it. But again, the primary motive is to define what a storage facility is and potentially allow it in light industrial zoning district. So let me jump in now, and I'm going to leave this shared screen here. Sorry, I'm working off two screens here, which I normally don't do, so bear with me. Okay, can everyone see now a PDF which looks like it would be from our development code? It should say Troutdale Development Code. I'm seeing a yes from Tanny. Okay. Okay, so this was also in your packet, and what you see here red underlined are the staff proposed definitions for what we have. And I do suspect there'll be probably some comments tonight on that from the public, but here's how we are presently proposing you define it. Accessory storage is the safekeeping of materials and goods at a location which the principal use is not a storage facility and its presence at a location is considered incidental to the principal use. What this basically is saying is this is normal storage that is incidental to the real reason you have a property. So if I'm a general contractor and I need to place a backhoe in my impound lot, that's storage. That's accessory storage. It's not the main purpose why I have my business there. Because I'm a contracting business, I just need a place to store my vehicles and equipment. That's kind of the concept behind accessory storage. That is different, however, from warehousing, which we'll get to in a minute, and it's definitely different from storage facility, where we're trying to thread potentially this needle. And the definition we're proposing here for storage facility is an establishment of which the principal use is providing leasable space where materials and goods may be stored by lessees in an outdoor, indoor, or portable setting. Storage facilities do include self-storage establishments that cater to residential and non-residential clientele, but shall not include commercial or industrial warehouses. This, in effect, would cover kind of the mini storage definition, which most people are accustomed to, but there are now different ways to also consider storage. That can also include storage potentially through connex or container boxes that are located on the property, and those container boxes are then leased. They could also include storage of vehicles that are being used by nearby property owners, but they don't have enough of the space to do that. Both of these situations have been identified already in the light industrial zoning district beyond the typical, what we think of as mini storage or mini warehousing. So storage, we were trying to be encapsulating of a couple of different ways of how storage can occur, and that's why you see the indoor, outdoor, or portable suggestion for how you can regulate it. And then going further down, you'll see some renumbering here, which is, of course, just edits as opposed to substantive things. The definition of a warehouse, which was already in the development code, and we say that a building used primarily for the storage of materials or goods for use on the site or later distribution. that is controlled by a single operator with public access restrictions. Warehouse shall not include storage facilities, and makes reference back. And that additional definition came at the suggestion of this body when we had this work session 2 months ago. To make that distinction, and that basically the distinction would be that it is controlled by a single operator and there would be access restrictions. In other words, if I'm renting a storage unit from a mini warehouse or whatever, I would have access or security or a way to get to my units that would not normally apply in a warehouse. That would be the distinction we're trying to seek as far as how we establish that. Before I take questions on that, I will also want to cover Chapter 3, which I'm going to move to right now, and then I can take a break and ask any questions, or take any questions from the commission. And for those of you in the public, remember, this would not be your time to ask questions. Chair will call you if you have any questions or comments at that time. Turning it now to Chapter 3, and this is where we talk about where do we need to make those distinctions and how do we get it into the light industrial zoning district as a conditional use. Here's where that happens. The first item you're seeing here is actually from the general commercial zoning district, and the reason we put it there is this little item here on Section D, where it talks about commercial use. The general commercial can allow service uses that are completely enclosed building other than outside storage, and we added the word accessory storage, and that was really more of a grammar check to make sure that anytime we said storage and just had it out there openly, we were clarifying, are we talking about accessory storage or are we talking about storage facilities? So in that case, for this page, we added the word accessory to clearly distinguish that. So to be very clear, storage facilities are not going to be introduced in general commercial zoning districts based on this application. We're just clarifying the definition of what storage we're talking about, in this case, accessory storage. Jumping ahead several pages, and this goes now to the light industrial zoning district, and this is where the major change would be. There is a change to the purpose statement, and that is better to and more accurately reflect the intent of this application. The district is primarily intended for light clean industries, usually of a manufacturing or storage nature, and previously it had said little, and now we are suggesting the word limited. That may be a semantic issue, but we felt maybe there could be a distinction made there. We go on to say they usually create little or no air or water pollution and have few, if any, nuisance factors such as outdoor accessory storage. Now, why do we say it that way? Again, the purpose of that district, if you think about it, is kind of a transitionary district between industrial, where you see a lot of outdoor accessory storage, and more commercial settings where you don't see it, where it should really be contained inside. And the idea here is that, okay, if you allow for storage facilities to be outside, you still are going to have it through a conditional use. This body gets to see the application review and place conditions on it, but it doesn't give just an outright allowance for it. The purpose statement does matter in that case. So if you have concerns about a slippery slope, having that definition as far as what type of storage you're allowing matters in your purpose statement. Further on down, we talk about what the permitted uses are. Again, we're not talking about a permitted use, we are talking about a conditional use, meaning the Planning Commission would have to approve any application for a storage facility as a conditional use. And here you see the small but very major addition of storage facilities as a conditional use for the zoning district. Going further down, also, we clarify as far as what is allowed in the general industrial use. Again, we're not introducing storage uses to general industrial. We are just clarifying, again, the purpose statement. So here we talk about and need outdoor primary or accessory storage of materials and products. Now, accessory storage is defined. So what do we mean by primary storage? Well, we talk about storage of equipment and materials in impound lots, and we have several properties in the general industrial zoning district where it's technically warehousing, but not by the definition. So then it's really more primary outdoor storage. So if I have a bunch of 18-wheeler, 18-wheel semi-trucks, and they just need impound lots to store their vehicles. We have several of those in the general industrial. That's kind of a primary storage, but it's not warehousing because it's not actually contained in a structure. So that's why we added that word primary or accessory. But it does not allow for storage facilities in the general industrial area. I'm just double checking to make sure. I think we just gave you the full section of that. I'm going to unshare for one moment, and I will take any questions as far as any of the definitions or changes that we have shown thus far in the text amendment, and then we will talk about the decision criteria. But I'll be happy to take questions now, Mr. Chair.
Questions for staff? Commissioner Clance?
I have some questions. I guess I'm gonna start with concerned, and maybe I'm misunderstanding some of what you're saying. When we're talking about portable, I mean, I guess what immediately comes to mind to me is not just necessarily tractor trailers, but, you know, I could see, when we talked about this originally, I thought the idea was to have some way for people that, you know, sold the stuff on Amazon to have a way to store some of their materials. And I could see this turning into, you know, my RV's parked over here because that's, you know, I travel to different fairs and so all my materials are in it. And in the off season, I need to park it. You know, trailers, RVs. And I guess what I originally thought was this would be more like how the Troutdale Airport hangars used to be used, where a lot of people not just stored their airplanes, but they actually had storage inside of it and it was enclosed. So basically, you know, they shut the doors and whatever went inside, no one really cared. I mean, and a lot of people would use it for secondary things like materials for their business or stuff like that. So I guess I'm just a little confused too on how we would also, when we talk about under light industrial, the little to limited and how we define that. Is that 30%, 3%? I mean, that seems really hard to defend. If someone comes in and says, what's little, I don't know. I'm just, I feel like this is a little fuzzy and maybe I'm just not understanding some of it.
Regarding, let me, if I may answer the second question first. The purpose statement did originally read little, which was already kind of a squishy, subjective term. So I think what we were trying to say here is limited, and limited would give the, I guess, in staff's mind, the impression that it can be tolerable, but there would be a restriction on it, that it's really incumbent upon this body, as far as the Planning Commission is concerned, to determine what is appropriate on a case-by-case basis. And I think that would be why we chose the word limited as opposed to little. As far as the storage facility definition, I think what we were trying to be thoughtful thereof, and again, this is obviously at your discretion if you wish to make edits to it, but I think what we were trying to accomplish here was a couple of things. One is, again, the idea of storage. You know, when this topic has come up previously, it's almost always been in the prism of a mini storage type facility. And what we're finding based on the types of inquiries we're getting and the needs of businesses locally and established that need storage solutions that cannot be afforded on their own property, not to mention certain types of companies or businesses or people looking to do business regionally, but just need a place to drop their stuff. The idea of like portable storage in particular, let's say it was through container boxes. If the portable storage, rather than being scattered about in rural areas or on job sites or in areas where it could be more problematic, the idea that it could be more centralized and that you have a more centralized, secure area to have 40-foot or 20-foot containers be located in one spot. I think that was the intent there. Similarly, though, I would say portable could also apply to vehicles, potentially. And we have had that situation come up. Full disclosure, there was actually a code case about this, about where an overflow of vehicles being prepared for, I believe, Amazon was occurring on a property nearby, but Amazon did not have the space or the location to do it and was intending to contract with the property owner to allow for those vehicles to be stored and ultimately moved off site. You know, whether or not that's an appropriate use for Troutdale, that's really where you folks come in and ultimately city council come in. So we're just trying to have staff to prepare something that could be considerate of, if that use is tolerable for you all, how you would define it.
Sandy, do you have a suggestion on what your idea of limited would be?
No, I was just concerned that we were wouldn't have any way to defend it in terms of that word. And look, I agree that totally that little isn't better. I just don't know that limited defines it. And if our intent is to say non-primary, or if our intent is to say incidental. Because to me, non-primary is going to be something that's, you know, easily less than 50%, and incidental is going to be something that's less than 10%.
Anything else, Commissioner Clemens?
Pardon?
Do you have anything else?
No, just on that portable, I'm still a little uncomfortable with portable setting. And I guess I would want something that is consistent so that you didn't have things like trailers next to RVs, next to, you know, those mod packages. I worry on how some of that looks.
Aesthetically?
Yeah. And I don't know that fencing is necessarily, I mean, just kind of the topography in Troutdale, a lot of that stuff is pretty easily seen past the fence line versus having some of them, you know, larger warehouses built that whatever goes inside is outside, not mine. So just my feedback. Thanks.
I think it's correct. Sorry.
Commissioner Prickett?
I think you're muted.
My concern is that with portable storage, that the content, depending on what's in it, could leak if it wasn't inside a facility into the groundwater and into the area around it. If it wasn't like a concrete or something that could drain into a, I don't know, some kind of storage thing that would hold that stuff, because chemicals we would have no control over what chemicals they put in there or what they actually store. And to say they won't put chemicals in there, we don't know. That would be a question, because I know that if you don't put a water barrier under the container storage, the ones that use box containers, they do tend to hold moisture and degrade after a while. So that would be a concern. And again, I agree with Sandy on the aesthetic thing. You have a hodgepodge, you know, no matter how you cover it, it's still, you know, gonna not look right. Even if it's in a light industrial area.
Anything else?
Continue on to our decision criteria and our proposed responses to it.
Sure.
Okay. One moment while I get the screen back on. Okay, can everyone see a PDF document showing 4 proposed findings at the top of it? Okay. Okay, so as mentioned at the top, section 2.065 covers the procedure for a type 4 procedure. Again, the city council is the ultimate authority here. We make recommendations. The recommendation is not technically binding, but the city council does place a lot of trust in this body to do this. But the actual decision criteria as far as how this commission would want to recommend it and how the city council would ultimately have to adopt it is they have to establish the findings, they have to establish the findings to match what the criteria are. So the following criteria are in bold, and then our proposed staff draft findings are below. For A, the proposed change to the development code does not conflict with the applicable plan, goals, or policies. We state that the amendments proposed seek to define and distinguish storage as a concept. We try to distinguish what accessory storage is, and the application itself would distinguish it from accessory storage and from warehousing itself. And by seeking to establish a conditional use designation, we believe the city would be provided with some additional protection to evaluate the proposal on a site-by-site basis. And then each time a proposal comes in, it would be the responsibility of this body to review that specific proposal to see if it passes the smell test with the comp plan. We believe, therefore, since it would be a conditional use, we think that the criteria would be met. The proposed change would be consistent with the applicable statewide planning goals. The majority of the amendments proposed in the application are not really substantive in a way, except for perhaps economic development, which is goal 9. And when you look at the statewide goals, it talks about in economic development the need for cities to have enough land available to realize economic growth and development opportunities. And what staff is hearing, and has certainly discussed with several people who have actually been on the call tonight, is that this is an economic opportunity for them, whereas in the past maybe it wasn't so obvious. So we think, again, through a conditional use process, you can evaluate that consideration along with the impact potentially on the land and the surrounding land areas. So we think we would meet the spirit of goal 9, and we think the criterion would be met there. I mentioned at the top the concerns have met. The proposed change is consistent with the applicable provisions of Metro Code. If this was a proposal to do it in general industrial, we would have to be having a very different conversation because staff would not be recommending that. The whole reason we do that distinction between general industrial and light industrial is to really focus most of our employment, our larger employment efforts in those general industrial areas. Light industry not only has a lighter impact from a use of property, but it also has a lighter impact economically too, just because they're smaller parcels and they're generally designed with a little bit more flexibility afforded to people coming and going. For instance, there's several contractors that are in there. That might be their base of operations, but oftentimes contractors are away on a job site or whatever. But it's an appropriate location to have those things, and a lot of times contractors need those additional storage solutions in there. So we do not think you're going to be in non-conformity with Metro if you allow it through conditional use and you limit it just to light industrial. If you wanted to have expanded to general industrial, that would be something that staff said you'd be in trouble with, but we feel like you would be in compliance here with the Metro Code. So, and as mentioned again, Metro Code really scopes to the goals of having Troutdale and other places that have these economic job center areas to develop it, and we have seen that development occur nearby. So we believe the criteria is met. Public need is best satisfied by this particular change. We think it is in the interest of the public to have clear, better defined definition from the code whenever we can provide that. And here's your opportunity to do so. We acknowledge historically that there has been a precedent where, yes, we've had storage facilities as far as mini storage in Troutdale. Right now, it's not allowed anywhere based on precedent. But the economic situation and repeated expressed interest that have occurred from investors looking to establish this type of business cannot be denied. And it's been several years since the city has last looked at it. It's really important to note, again, that of the 3 storage facilities that are in the city, one of these facilities is directly impacted by this potential application. Because what it could do, if it is approved the way it's written and it's allowed, it takes that particular property out of a non-conforming situation that is in the property owner's best interest. So while you shouldn't be making decisions based on one property, it is an acknowledgement that at one point that use was tolerable in this zoning district. Why would it not be tolerable anymore? I think that's the larger question you want to ask yourself. And to allow this use to be better defined, and once again, going through a conditional use permit process gives you guys, again, the chance to evaluate not only new uses, but also refinements to that existing property, if ever needs to be the case. So you still have levers, and you still have the ability to review applications for concerns about aesthetics and impact to the surrounding area. So we believe the criterion here is met. And the change would not adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of the community. It is not anticipated that there would be health concerns that stem from the introduction of the storage facilities. While there would be the concern, I think, that Commissioner Prickett had allocated, what I would say to that is for any new type of use or introduction of the use, if it comes before a conditional use permit, these types of facilities have to abide by full standards of the code. And that includes for stormwater runoff and design and paving and the like. So there would be, through design requirements, through a site development review, let alone the conditional use permit, there would be protections afforded, or I shouldn't say protections, but there would be certain regulatory demands forced by the city anyway of the developer to make sure that their property does not negatively impact the environment. In the realm of safety, again, there's an inherent need to secure these types of facilities. These facilities are almost always gated. There would be the potential for a caretaker residence in this type of location for a lot of these facilities. While there has been certainly press about the larger safety concern, I speak again to the idea that if you are able to better consolidate these types of storage facilities in one properly managed and secure facility, it's probably a lot better than having random storage or random container boxes or outdoor storage in other property where there could be more prone to theft, burglary, or other types of vagrancy that occurs. And vagrancy, I might add, is especially problematic in our industrial areas. And lastly, providing an additional way for individuals or companies to store the goods and materials can also improve the overall general welfare, not just of the district, but the entire community. We're seeing an uptick in residential units that are typically smaller, particularly apartments. Many of these types of apartments do not have the ability to have larger storage closets in these areas. There's a demand. Clearly the market is saying there is a demand for storage, both at the residential and non-residential level. And again, while historically we have not, the community, been really receptive to that as of late, perhaps there is that market opportunity and the ability through the conditional use process to better design it. And through the conditional use, the Planning Commission also has levers to require additional conditions that go above and beyond what would typically be required in the city. So again, we believe the criterion is met here. So in short, we do recommend that you recommend to City Council an approval for this. As far as the rest of this hearing is concerned, again, you should, staff will be happy to take any additional questions from the Commission and open it up for public comment and consideration, consider any additions that they may offer or edits potentially they offer, and then ultimately it is yours to deliberate on and to forward a recommendation or continue the hearing. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll yield back and I'll be happy to take any questions from the Commission.
Okay. Questions for staff? Mr. Allen.
Hi, I have a potential conflict of interest I should declare. I have principal interest in a trucking company that does business in this area.
I believe Mr. Allen's the alternate, so
Right.
he's not technically voting.
Yeah, you're not technically held to that, so you're good. You can be conflicted. It's okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Clance?
I have a question, Chris, on the last comments you were making about how a lot of, the apartments that are being built need storage for some of their stuff. How does that meet the employment criteria? Because I thought that was part of Metro's goal, was that some of our light industrial should also meet employment standards.
Sorry, one second, Commissioner, I'm just pulling it up here. So you were referring to my comment in criteria E?
Yes.
Well, I think, look, these are facilities that I think can be said that do not, at least on the site themselves, directly impact employment. But I think what could be, you could make an argument, one could make an argument that by allowing for the placement of these facilities, the ability for, and I guess we're thinking in the non-residential component for right now, the ability for, say, contractors to be able to go to said facility to pick up materials or supplies to work on properties in the city or in the region, to do that could be contributing indirectly anyway to employment. The ability for the larger employers as they exist right now to have the ability to locate any sort of storage that they either can't or would not be able to locate on their actual premises, to locate it nearby, allows them to continue to operate in the city and thus protects employment there. I mean, I understand those are reaches to a degree and they are indirect. I don't think there's anybody arguing that there would be a direct employment benefit, but I think what we would say though is that, especially with the Metro lens, the city still maintains a good amount of property, even though we've had a lot of development as of late. We still have good properties in the general industrial zoning district, particularly in the TRIP properties up there, the Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park, that still have development potential for dozens, if not hundreds of jobs on these properties if they are developed at their full scale. And frankly, the size of these light industrial properties, which are generally 5 acres or less, really based on scale would not really be able to have that much of an impact. Did I answer your question?
I guess I'm confused still. I thought initially part of why we were doing this was to set up almost a category for temporary storage, kind of, the WeWorks of storage for different businesses, like a contractor that needs short-term storage or someone that sells product via Amazon, that type of a thing. But then I'm also hearing, and tell me if I'm just not understanding or hearing this wrong, that this would also be, and possibly even mixed within the same facility, where if I live in an apartment, I park my boat.
There could be that, but I would say that you do have that allowances already in general industrial already, that there is, for certain uses, you have vehicle storage, repair, maintenance in general industrial. But what I would say though is that that's something that you could further finesse, or if you wanted to make that distinction, that's your prerogative as a commission to make that recommendation. Kind of left it open-ended.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the commission?
This is Commissioner Wilcox. I don't have a question exactly, but I'd like to follow up on the seem to be concerns that I have also about the idea of portable storage. What do you mean by that is shipping containers or semi-trailers, parked semi-trailers with staircases attached to them? Or,
I think the original information was, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
So I have the same concern that Commissioner Prickett had about leaking containers in particular. But the whole idea of somebody just dropping a shipping container on the ground somewhere and somebody putting in whatever. And what their attention, got one more question on Chapter 3, 161, if I could. You talk about outdoor accessory storage as a nuisance factor. I don't understand that. I see bright lights or noise or odor, but I don't understand why outdoor accessory storage, like, say lumber, for example, why that would be a nuisance factor.
I think the thought there, Commissioner, was given the original purpose statement was that it was primarily intended for where I think we see the words, these industries usually do not require wear rail licenses, have little process visibility. They usually create little, I think what we were trying to encapsulate there is that typically uses in this zoning district are usually contained inside, that they usually have a lesser footprint, they're less intense uses, they don't generate effluent or a lot of pollution, be it effluent or maybe even visual pollution in that regard. And I think that was the concern about having outdoor accessory storage as opposed to intended storage facilities, is that you just lessen the visible impact of those properties if because in some cases it could be considered a nuisance. That might be an overreach on our end, and again, that was something we added, but if the commission feels it doesn't need to be in there to make the point, we can just as soon strike it out.
Well, we're saying that the outdoor accessory storage would be a nuisance in light industrial area.
Unless it was approved through a storage facility, in which case outdoor storage would be the primary use of it, and then it had been already vetted, considered, and approved through a conditional use permit through commission. In other words, you would, by your decision-making, your review of the criteria for each individual case, you've determined in this particular case, outdoor storage potentially is okay. And that, again, goes back to the word limited as opposed to little.
Commissioner Wilcox, did that answer your question, sir?
Okay, yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Yeah, we do proponents first. Okay, at this time, anyone that's wishing to speak as a proponent to the application?
You're welcome to come up, and please remember to state your name and address, please.
So would you like?
Whichever's better. Hi, my name is Mara Lay, and my address is 16837 Southeast Chula Vista Avenue in Sandy, Oregon, 97055.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, and you wanted to speak as a proponent?
And that was, yes.
Okay. Go right ahead.
All right, well, thank you. And I've done a couple of these in my time. I'm a business owner. I own a operating company that has 3 businesses that are local here to Troutdale, 2 that are outside of Troutdale. My family owns a considerable amount of commercial real estate in Portland, Vancouver, Corbett, and even in the Sandy area. And the way that I come to this meeting is I represent Alex Mock. He has hired me to run a few of his local entities. One of them is an entity called ASM, and he has Connex storage containers. And what we're trying to do, and we're really thankful actually at this point in time that Chris is bringing this up, because coming at a time of incremental growth in surrounding communities, not just here in the Troutdale area, entertaining the thought behind it. My family just sold 4.5 acres in Portland to a company from Oklahoma that's going to put 350 Connexes in Portland and do the same type of entity over there, where they do portable storage options for not only business owners, but also for different individuals within the community. And it is growing and expanding above and beyond just in our little community here. And I think that it's incremental and important for local entities to entertain the idea right now, especially during a time where we're going through COVID. And there's so many businesses that are struggling and so many operators that are doing everything they can to make ends meet. And to meet demand in their individual businesses just to keep themselves, their families, their employees running and operable. And portable storage allows an opportunity for these individuals to be able to house product, merchandise, construction equipment like you talked about earlier. We have entities and individuals that own landscaping opportunities and businesses that have no place within their own means right now that's affordable outside of portable storage to be able to house those things. Traditional storage is usually 10 by 15, 10 by 20, 10 by 25. There's a lot of uses for traditional storage that you cannot find whenever you are looking as a business owner to house equipment such as construction equipment or such as landscaping equipment. A lot of traditional storage will not allow for that type of equipment to be stored on their site. And so you have these owners that are trying to sustain their business because maybe hard times fell and they lost their home, or maybe they're living in an apartment and they just don't have the ability to afford the garages that are there or present on site. They need an operable opportunity to be able to maintain their entities and their establishments. And portable solutions such as Connexes, they're 8 by 9 by 40. That's almost double the length of a regular storage facility. And it has the ability to allow them to put their tractors and their equipment, even their work trucks, trailers, lawnmowers, so many different things in those Connexes. And it allows them to be able to keep their employees working and their business operable during a time right now where affordable options are limited and meager. There are existing storage companies in the light industrial zone that as of right now are non-conforming. I know that they would love to conform and meet compliance, and I think that's why we're really appreciative of what Chris is doing, because this would enable them to have something for them to find, that they substantiate and meet the code that's being presented to them by their local community. They want to be conforming. Let's see here. I had one other thing I wanted to bring up to you guys. Maybe I actually already touched on it. I think I might have already touched on it. But I just wanted to make sure that we understand that even though we're not growing jobs as a whole within this industry, because you're right, it's a minute amount of individual jobs that are allowed or allowing for this type of business to maintain. But it's really who this type of business is supporting within our community that I think we really need to take a step and consider and think of those individuals that 100% at this point in time rely on entities that will allow for them to have affordability in there. And I don't like the word warehousing, but storage or mini storage or portable storage or however we want to phrase it. And we have letters of recommendation and letters of support from some of our tenants that are business owners within Gresham and Troutdale who have written just to let you guys know what this portable storage has allowed for their entities and for their businesses, so that you can kind of get a little bit of their perspective. And a lot of them literally looked at me when I was talking to them about this initiative and were like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't know what to do if I didn't have this. They've already had so much stripped from them because of COVID, and some of them are hanging on by the skin of their hair. Like I get emotional. They don't even know where it's going to come from. And so we're just trying to provide an outlet for these people so that they can move forward in their careers and be profitable and successful and help grow our community in any way that they can. And I think that's the message I wanted to get across.
Me?
Mr. Moss.
Hi, excuse me. I'm Alex Mock, and Mara is my business development manager.
Alex, can we get your address too?
It is, which one would you like? So residence is 46700 Southeast Coleman Road, Sandy, Oregon. But my industrial property, a light industrial that we have, is 1009 Northeast Harlow Place in Troutdale. Now, my family has been in the human health and the environment business in Troutdale since 1948. I own Goodman Sanitation, which in polite terms would be a human fecal transportation company. And it's very, very difficult to locate a septic system business. And I have a very unique piece of property on Harlow Road, which is 100 foot wide, and I think 700 feet deep. So to build buildings or whatever to conform to what's allowed in the light industrial is almost next to impossible. Having been in the septic business here in Troutdale since 1948, in the human health and the environment business, and some of the people here on the council are clients of ours, maybe some of you are, nobody wants us as a neighbor until they need us. And in my deal, the way I got into these Connex boxes is that we have very expensive electrical control panels that run septic systems that can be out in the weather. And so I started with that. And then I just met other business owners that had the same kind of needs that I think Mara touched on it. And to build buildings and meet all the offsets and stuff, with the Connexes, they're considered a trailer. And one of the commissioners brought up that she was worried about leakage or this or that or the other thing. The one reason they have Connex boxes is that that's how most merchandise is shipped throughout the world, because Connex boxes are leak-proof, weatherproof, waterproof. And we maintain to make sure that the structural integrity of the boxes that we have meet that standard. And so with that, I would have to think, you know, being with depending where you sit on global warming or whatever, everybody always wants to pave or concrete or do whatever. And if you study things, what you really need to do is let the water go into the ground. There's nothing that goes in our Connex boxes that's getting out of those Connex boxes that would mean that we would need to pave or concrete or do any of that. And that would just contribute to global warming. And that would kind of be my point for right now. And I'm open to questions.
I have none. That
Questions?
sums it up quite well.
Thank you.
Commissioner,
I have a question. So, and this is to the gentleman who spoke, who's just recently spoke. Am I understanding that you're opposed to paving altogether, or just that you don't think it's needed?
Well, our business is located next to Troutdale Storage, and Troutdale Storage's pavement is impervious pavement, meaning when it rains, the water goes down through to recharge the groundwater. And if you study this stuff much, and I'm in the septic business, and so recharging groundwater is one of the most important things that you can do. So it's not that I'm opposed to paving, I just see no need for it when they have a facility like we have. We're not doing anything that, and we've gravelled, it's all gravelled, but I just would see no reason to have to pave with what our current uses are.
And then can I also ask a question on, I believe it was Mara, the first person, is she still there?
yes.
You commented that things like landscaping equipment weren't accepted at standard storage places. Why is that?
From my understanding, and thank you for asking that, from my understanding, and I'm going by a gentleman who had a very complicated time finding storage facilities that would allow for him to be able to park, like for instance, his trailers inside the space. Well, part of it was because of the fact that the trailer is very, very large and takes up a large part of the space, but that he would need it, you know, a few times each week, and kind of the in and out thought process behind that. There's a lot of really narrow areas in that traditional storage view plan, or the way that it's structured. So with us, we have, you know, 20 to 25 feet in between, you know, where the connexes are to the next connex. But in that storage area, there's like 12 feet. And so it doesn't allow for the same type of flow or traffic or movement as the area that we have allows for. And I think that would be something to maybe consider in the conditional use facet of something in our neighborhood as far as what types of containers and what types of storage we would allow for people to be able to store equipment that is larger than what would traditionally fit in a 10 by 20, box.
So it's not that they're not allowed in terms of regulations or something like that. It's just sizing and convenience.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you also commented about the need for light industrial over general industrial. Why does light industrial need storage when it can already occur in general?
Well, it's not so much one over the other, and if I commented over that, I apologize, and I must have misrepresented myself. I think it's just as valid a need in light industrial as it is in general. And I think in light industrial, you have parcels, like Chris talked about earlier, that are smaller, and that smaller parcel would allow for a business owner who's trying to develop job opportunities within the community. It might allow them to have a parcel of land that could be used for portable storage or for Connex storage, or however you want to label it, accessible storage, in a smaller area, but would greatly benefit our community in general as a whole, because it allows for business owners to be able to have areas to store their property and their inventory to where it would enable them to keep their business open. I don't think it's really over or, versus or over, but more so just it should be in line with.
Okay. I mean, one of my hesitations with light industrial is that it can be adjacent to residential. And so I appreciate that, a lot of businesses need low cost options. I also appreciate that for a lot of people, their primary investment is their home, at least in the city of Troutdale. And protecting that investment, especially as times are tough, is also important. So, I don't know.
And I agree with
you.
I agree. I think that we would leave it up to you guys with better judgment, but I think that it's definitely something that should be considered as an option.
If I might add to that, Alex Mock, our location on Harlow Road there's no chance we're gonna have any residential around us. We're already fully developed down there. We've got Apollo Plumbing, we've got Troutdale Storage, we've got the marijuana dispensary, we've got, what's our local artist that does the brass?
Yeah, bronze sculpture.
Yeah, bronze sculpture. Our biggest problem, to be honest with you, on Harlow Road is the homeless people and the people that are using an access to get down along the Sandy River Delta. And we've recently had to put up concrete blocks because we can't access our own businesses because the people that are parking there, and it's uncontrolled, and they're parking on private land, and they're causing more of a traffic problem than the businesses that are permitted to be there. As far as, my business and where we have the septic business, like I said earlier, nobody wants to be located next to the septic guy until their toilet doesn't flush. And for Connex boxes, this worked very well for us. Our clients understand the business that we run, and we all work together real well. I run an average of 7 to 10 employees, I believe. And oftentimes during the slow season, they're out moving the Connexes around or helping our clientele or whatever we can do to help substantiate their businesses or what they're doing.
Okay, any other questions? I have one. I've known you for a number of years, and I've always heard you say that you're in the wastewater recycling business, and now you come in with two.
I'm a homo sapiens transportation engineer, Danny. Because when I'm in a public setting, and we all know this, we go, it's like, well, what do you do? And what do you do? And what do you do? And excuse me, the committee, if I want to have a short conversation with you, I'll just say I'm in the shit business. But if we want to talk and interject, we keep coming up, and people in my industry, it's a problem. And so in my industry, we go to like continuing education conferences. Just what business are we really in?
We are in the environmental.
And, you know, one of the big things that we do that you know, a lot of people in the septic business don't do, I mean, we actually, on our Harlow Road, we are a DEQ permitted sewage treatment facility. And so pretty much everything that we pump from people like you're one of our clients, we treat it, and then we use it as a soil amendment for fertilizer, for hay fields or crop fields. Another thing that we do, I mean, we have a contract with the city of Salem, which is the third largest city in the state of Oregon, where we land apply their treated biosolids on farm fields over in the Duffertai Valley area. Several years ago, even the city of Troutdale, when you were out of compliance with the DEQ because you weren't running your sewage treatment plant correctly, I brought in a team of experts and we fixed your problem. Most recently, when you were trying to decommission your old treatment plant, I brought in a team of experts that helped fix that for you too. And so I kind of sit behind the scenes a little bit. Great question, Tanny. But if you got a better answer as to what do I do for a living, let me know.
Quite ready for that.
For all the heads.
Okay, thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Okay, and I see a couple people with their hand up, and if we could have Tracy Brown, please.
Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead,
My
sir.
name is Tracy Brown. Can you hear me? Yeah, my name is Tracy Brown. I live at 17075 Fur Drive in Sandy. So formerly, I was the planning director in the city of Sandy for 15 years. And so in that position, very similar to what Chris does for city of Troutdale, I was responsible for reviewing and writing quite a bit of code language. I'm also working on behalf of Alex Mock, and he has hired me to assist him in kind of navigating the process for him as this kind of evolves. As Chris mentioned, I was looking at the zoning map earlier today, and I had counted about 18 properties, and definitely rely on Chris that he knows the city better than I, but he mentioned there was 30 properties. I'm not sure of the acreage of that, but it appeared to be proportionally a fairly small proportion of the overall city zoning. I don't know if it's the smallest zoning district, but it's pretty close to the smaller area of zoning. So that's what this would apply to. So my role, I guess, in this was to review the code, word by word, to determine, if I thought that was clear. And I think that's to everyone's benefit to have additional eyes on it, that it would be easy to understand for both the future applicant, and that it could be fairly interpreted by the city as well as others. And so in reading that, I felt like the staff did a very good job of writing this code. I mean, I think it is clear, and it has all the components I think necessary. They've hit the various I guess additional sections. As one of the commissioners did mention, he was asking about including the outdoor storage, accessory storage in the purpose statement. That was something that also caught my eye. And it's kind of being lumped with bright yard lights and continuous noise and things like that. After hearing Chris explain the reasoning and the objective of that, I felt comfortable with it being included, where I was originally thinking that it seemed out of place with the rest of those kind of nuisance items. The only other item I noticed, and and it wasn't talked about, was in the pedestrian walkway section. It's section 8.030. And it is including, there's an amendment to include outdoor accessory storage areas. And I wondered if it should also include storage facilities. And this is related to, you know, businesses or developments that will need pedestrian connectivity between the various components of the business. That section does allow it to be interpreted to include storage facilities, but it would be clearer in my mind that if storage facilities were added to that section.
Mr. Brown, can you repeat the section number again?
Yeah, this was section 8.030, pedestrian walkways. And you're in number 6. The proposal is to add a word, outdoor accessory storage areas, in that last sentence, etc. And I was suggesting that perhaps storage facilities could be added into that list of types of businesses. I mean, I guess really in reviewing it, I think my conclusion of my review of reviewing it and reading it through and kind of thinking about how it could be applied and interpreted is, you know, definitely supportive of the amendments. I think it would provide an additional, you know, type of business opportunity that the city currently has, but as was mentioned, one of the facilities, I guess maybe all the facilities are non-conforming. So if something happened to any of those facilities, especially the one in the light industrial zone, it could not be rebuilt, as I would read the non-conforming use code. So that would help to clarify that facility on Harlow Road. And I think I'll end with that. I don't know if you have any questions for me.
Any questions for Mr. Brown from the commission? Commissioner Glenn?
What was the second change you were commenting on? Can you go back to
Yeah.
that?
The first one was, I guess the one was the purpose statement, the proposed change to the purpose statement. And it's including in that kind of middle sentence where it's talking about they usually create little or no water pollution, air or water pollution. If any nuisance factors such as outdoor accessory storage, bright lights, continuous noise, objectionable odors. And so the proposal is to add the outdoor accessory storage. It caught my eye as kind of out of place in a sense, but after hearing Chris talk about the reasoning, you know, I guess to step back just a tiny bit from that, you know, it would be our preference to have the storage facility as a permitted use, but I do understand the need to kind of evaluate these on a case-by-case basis. So with Chris's explanation that part of the reason of including that in the list was to kind of highlight that, and then it could be evaluated as a conditional use. So it kind of goes with the reasoning for including it as conditional use.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, and next we would have Scott.
Yep. Greetings, everybody. My name is Scott Bird, and I own Apollo Drain and Plumbing Service. My address is 853 Northeast Harlow in the fair city of Troutdale. My wife and I started this business back in 1984, so almost 40 years ago. And we've had 2 or 3 locations since we started up. Our final resting place is on Harlow. We've built, which I believe is a pretty nice facility over there. It's taken us about 40 years to do. And we are in the same business as Alex, basically, other than we don't haul it away, we make it go away down your drains. And I have to agree with him in the fact that you've heard the phrase, it may be shit to you, but it's my bread and butter, not to be crude, but that's what I've looked at our business for many, many years, is that it is an essential business. And I'm proud to be a part of Troutdale as well as the industry that Alex and I are in. That having been said, what we have down there is we have, and I'm confident that a lot of you have seen it, we have a company that upfits chassis, truck chassis with boxes. They do the box install and they do the wraps on those. And their main customer is Amazon. At any time we might have 20, 30, 35 trucks out there, whatever. It's a little less now due to the COVID thing. But these vehicles are not parked willy-nilly. They're parked as if it was a farmer was planting a row crop, and I can use that analogy because that's where I came from, was a farmer in Eastern Washington State. There are no oil leaks, no diesel leaks. Like I said, they're brand new. Our facility is gated all the way around. It's very secure. The Amazon, when the facility who upfits those vehicles contacted me, I don't know how they found out about us, but we had some ground that could have been used back there. And with my farming background, my dad taught me no dirt should go to waste. Use it for something. And this was, frankly, kind of a godsend for us, because at the time, those of you on the commission may know that there were some issues with our building, a very expensive lawsuit in regards to substandard quality. And also, if we were required to put gravel and or pavement down in the back area, that would cause an extreme hardship in the fact that one of the things that was named in the lawsuit was the contractor put approximately 2,500 yards of soil back there that was supposed to have been removed off-site. So if I have the opportunity to spend $60,000 to $75,000, $80,000 to put gravel and or gravel back there, I would also have the opportunity to pay to have that removed when the time comes for the lawsuit to settle, and they would have the opportunity to remove that dirt. Also, our plan is to expand within the next 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, and put up at least one more building for what we do out there. And when I drive by that on the freeway or something, frankly, I look over there and I see all those Amazon trucks parked. That shows me posterity. I've got 11 grandkids. I guess that's posterity. It shows me prosperity and growth. It shows me prosperity and growth and it also brings vast attention to Amazon. And as stated earlier, Amazon is probably the biggest provider, or one of the biggest providers in this whole area with jobs. And when they found out that they were able to pick up their vehicles after they're upfitted 5 minutes from their facility out there, as opposed to 45 minutes, they were all over that. I think that's pretty much all I have. We don't have any chemicals or contaminants of any kind that is stored out on that area out there. And it is maintained on a regular basis so far as spraying weeds and keeping it so that it looks nice and organized and it looks like a clean parking facility, which actually it is. And that's all I had to say about that. Any questions?
Commissioner Glantz?
course I have a question, right? I have a
Of
question,
course.
Scott.
Yeah.
How do you know what's in the storage? I mean, how do you know there's no chemicals?
In what storage?
So if you're doing some of the truck trailers, which is I'm guessing what they're doing, they're storing some of that.
No.
You said there was no
What-
chemicals.
You know, what they are, commissioners, they are brand spanking new. They've never been used.
Right.
Chassis where Morgan Company puts a box on there and then they wrap that box with whatever the company is, Hertz, Penske, Amazon, whatever. They wrap it and it is basically stored there for a week, week and a half, and then the people who purchase the vehicle, they come pick up the vehicle and they take it out. So the trucks are all empty. There's nothing stored there, just the vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. That was a good question, by the way.
Any other questions for Scott?
Well, I feel kind of bad. Alex got a lot of questions put on him. I only got one. Come on, guys, work with me. And I want to tell Chris, you're a good guy, Alex. We'll get together later. I also want to thank Chris for what he's doing here. I think he's going through a lot of effort, and we appreciate the committee here's support. We're just like you guys, just trying to make ends meet, especially right now during COVID.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any other individuals testifying? Pardon me?
Still proponent.
Yeah. Not seeing any, no, nothing written. Okay. Any opponents wishing to testify this evening? Any neutral parties wishing to testify this evening? All right. With that, I would entertain a motion to close.
I move that we close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Okay, you're too slow. Okay, motion is second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, public hearing is closed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I was gonna say, just for me, something that might read better is, you know, where we talked about the outdoor accessory storage. Cute little map.
Just one moment, commissioners, we're just getting a window here so you can see each other and we can make the edits on the clock, so just fiddling with that right now. I think that's the best we can do. Sure.
Okay, I was just gonna say, maybe if we just reworded that a little bit, nuisance factors such as bright yard lights, continuous noise, or objectable odors, and then maybe throw in something about outdoor accessory storage. It just might flow better than coming out of the gate with it. Just a thought. Anyone adverse to that?
Do you have specific phrasing in mind then?
I would just go down past objectable odors and say, let me think about that.
Okay. Just for that, that's there right now.
Okay.
one concern I have on all this is, I mean, the testimony we've received tonight, I have no issues with, but I'm concerned that in order to accommodate some people who need that we're opening the gate to things we don't want. And while I understand it's a conditional use, I have yet to see a conditional use actually declined. It's always just, we'll add more conditions, but we don't decline it. So I'm a little concerned with how we do this. Not concerned, I'm torn on how to protect, you know, good Troutdale businesses from, you know, not getting what they need versus not just opening the door to anybody. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I guess I would say, just as a point of clarification, I'm a customer of Troutdale Storage, which is the adjacent business. And they have 8 foot onto like 30 by 40. I mean, anything in between. And there's indoor, there's outdoor, there's garages, there's stuff that's out in the open. And I guess the reason I'm saying that is the comment was made that you can't circulate in there with a trailer. And I would actually challenge that, because you're able to get in and around that facility fairly well. But I do think this is could be a different customer. I should say may or may not be a different customer. But with that, I've had a number of people tell me that they think that the Troutdale storage facility is quite unsightly. And they said, you know, that really isn't what I like to see when I first come into town. To me, hate to say it, it doesn't look bad. It looks like a storage facility. So I'm kind of indifferent to that. But I do hear, you know, what people are saying, and I don't know exactly what they're looking for, but obviously for some people, that's not filling the bill.
And just from the staff point of view, I mean, obviously you heard testimony from people who are very much in favor and who have already introduced some concepts to that site already, and would want to continue on that. But we're presenting it again in the fact that it hasn't been taken up in several years, even though last time it did not get a favorable outcome at the time with City Council. But Arini and I and Marley and Amber receive these inquiries pretty regularly from headhunters just doing their due diligence, trying to see if this is allowed. The other thing too is you have the majority, five different councilors on City Council right now than were there before. So the potential is there that maybe their opinions may have shifted on that, never mind whatever the economic situations of the community, COVID or non-COVID related, you have a different majority on council, they may have a different philosophy on how they want to do that. So that's why we'll bring this up again.
Commissioner Prickett?
My only concern is that in the past, where we've had conditional uses where we've said that there were requirements and they end up being something totally different than what they originally were planned for, and we have no recourse to remove it once it's there. I mean, you could take them to court, which is a long process. But we've had it before where they said that it's going to be one way and it was totally not the way it turned out to be. And we never even could rectify it after that. So my concern is once it's a conditional use, you can condition it, but the conditions never are they're only as good as the paper they're written on.
Well, and I guess that's on us as a city. You know, if the conditions, if we conditional use something and the conditions aren't met, that's on us as a city to drag that applicant back in here and say, what up?
You do have in the development code the ability to compel that to have a hearing if that's not there. I think where you're speaking to Commissioner Prickett is that by direction from the city council, where staff in particular, who's charged with enforcing the development code, is told that it is a complaint-driven system and to not go actively searching for infractions of it, we're getting the political pressure basically to say, live and let be, even if they're not fulfilling their obligations on the conditional use permit. I mean, that could certainly be a message you convey you can convey it at any time, but this might also be a very appropriate time, no matter what your recommendation to city council is, that says, look, you know, we want it conditional, but you also have to commit to enforcing the conditions that we, as a planning commission, want to impose on this application. You can't, that's not necessarily complaint driven. That has impact on that property, the surrounding property, then the city as a whole, if you don't do that.
Well, and we also don't have, in container, like Connex containers, we don't have control what they put in them. I know that they have an issue with moisture buildup inside if they're not on a hard surface or have a moisture barrier underneath it. Landscaping or something to make it look more, I don't know. I don't know what that looks like.
Now, I must have had a faulty one because I did have one of those that did leak.
The Connex boxers?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we are a recommending agency. We are not an enforcement agency.
Right,
when it
that's the
comes to
problem sometimes.
Conditional use.
Right.
I was just pulling up here, commissioners, there on the left side of your screen, kind of the types of things you can condition as part of an approval for an application. And in spite of the testimony you heard earlier, typically, particularly for a new use, when you're doing a site development approval, there has to be really good justification if they do not want to put it on an impervious surface. It's one thing to say impervious surface leads to, it's better for the water to particulate down, but for the purposes of those just-in-case periods, you're still going to want to have that. And, that is a typical city requirement, as is stormwater retention for, doing those kinds of things. So I think if there's any comfort that can be afforded to you all as you consider this, understand that staff is also simultaneously doing a site development review, which involves the Public Works Department, which looks at stormwater facilities and concerns about environmental degradation on that. So by the time it would even get to you, you would also have staff recommendations and conditions of approval from not just Brady and I, but from Public Works, fire, any concerns about combustibility or hazardous materials and all that. There are conditions that the agencies, the review agencies themselves can place on it, in addition to the ones that you see here on your screen too, as far as what you would want to do. By doing a conditional use permit, it effectively grants you some licenses to go, not just meet the code, but above and beyond what the code would normally require.
So, I guess I'll just say for me, I'm not opposed to conditional using storage facilities. I'm really struggling with the Connex box piece of it. That's where I'm having trouble.
Chris, I have a question.
Sure.
So if if a regular storage area has to meet certain building requirements as far as structure, when it comes to earthquake and other flood and all that, I don't know where this would lie in that. But how would they prevent them from being, I don't know. I mean, conic boxes are conic boxes, and you can stack them on each other. So would there be like a height limit, or would there be a way that they could strap them down so they don't move? I know they're supposed to be portable, but they have to have some way to not be.
Well, a lot of that is actually driven by fire life safety concerns as far as the positioning on the property. In other words, God forbid something was in there that shouldn't have been in there anyway, and it goes a fire, and if they're stacked on top of it, the fire apparatus has to be able to navigate its way to effectively contain it. So
Right.
those types of siting requirements, let alone stackable requirements, can be regulated through the Oregon Fire Code to a degree. So while, like, connexes, to your point, are not buildings and are not regulated by building code, there are still some regulations that can be placed on how they are on site. I'm just taking a look here at the conditions as well to see if there's another fix that you might be able to offer in that regard for the concern. It's a fair question, Commissioner Prickett, but I think we would largely look at that. And also considering too that on several of these properties, there are other constraining factors, whether they be natural constraints as far as VECO, the vegetation corridor overlay, the airport landing field, which is nearby, may regulate the height of it to a degree. The fact that some of it is, actually most all the properties are located in the Sandy Drainage Improvement Company. They are a regulating agency too. They're concerned about excessive, and I'm talking about just general storage here, not just for connexes. I mean, there's a number of agencies that are looking at these potential properties that could be up for consideration. But you can't regulate everything. I think there's an acknowledgement, and I think admittedly there is I wouldn't call it a slippery slope, but there could be a risk associated by opening up this opportunity, even if it's through a conditional use permit. I think it's completely honest to say that.
Chris, to Shirley's point, can these be stacked?
Yes, typically Connex boxes could be stacked. But if the typical Connex box is 9 feet tall, if you wanted to, go by, say, the building height, you couldn't do more than 4. But.
So I have a question on that. And kind of following up on Shirley's question again, if we have standard storage facilities that, have paved, have met building code requirements and that kind of thing, is this a little bit like some of the discussions we've had on food courts versus restaurants, where we're kind of coming in and possibly undercutting some businesses that have already met the requirements and now we're changing them?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, do you mean that there are other, like what's called warehousing, because that's been effectively out in the city, by introducing this type of land use, does that undercut the business abilities for warehousing businesses that have already existed and been approved by code?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about where do I put, and not necessarily just the ones we've talked to tonight, but the intent of the code is if somebody comes in and I'm storing my boat or I'm storing household materials. Sorry about my cat there. Yeah, are we undercutting some of the other public storage facilities that are already out there?
Well, we haven't received any specific testimony from them.
Fair point. Fair point.
Sorry? Can you repeat the last thing you said there, Commissioner?
So I said fair point, that we didn't receive any.
We didn't receive any from the others. The RV storage in particular has been an animated topic. That's one that we have gotten a lot of calls about in the past. That has also to do with the fact that a lot of our neighborhoods, don't have adequate space for RV parking in the neighborhoods. You could argue just as much by not providing storage opportunities off-site from somebody's residence, the preponderance of RV parking and boat parking, trying to fit all your toys on your property actually can have a negative impact residentially, which is what some of the people, when we tell them, no, you can't do that right now in this particular area, would point out. And I think they have a fair point. Does it compete with existing, traditional warehousing? I don't know. I don't think we have a good read on that, quite honestly, but I would suspect given the type of inquiries that the staff has received, it doesn't seem to suggest that it would be that case, but.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I kind of had trouble getting to warehousing. Warehousing to me is a truck comes in and unloads goods and they're staged or they are loaded onto another vehicle and taken out. And I don't know that I've kind of seen that in this environment where, to me, that definition of warehousing would be played out. It's more like it's maybe a business storing their wares individually, but not, it doesn't seem to me like there's a shipping and receiving system going on.
Sorry, I'm pulling up another section you're talking about. Apologies, y'all, for the split screen. We're doing our best here. This is the definition. And again, the definition is presented to you all tonight was based on our understanding of your feedback from the work session we had in May on how you better define or delineate warehousing from storage facility. So if that definition doesn't work, that's okay. We can try to couple up with a different one, but that's, I believe, what we tried to best share with you what we thought we heard.
And I was going to say, I guess, back to the Conex box comment, that wouldn't, if for some reason we didn't allow Conex, that would not prohibit them from doing RV storage, boat storage, or anything like that.
Not necessarily.
Right. If that's where more of the demand is, I don't know.
Right, I mean, the storage facility definition, again, really was somewhat broad, indoor, outdoor, portable setting. I mean, outdoor storage could also be, vehicular-based storage for RVs or boats or so forth.
Correct. How we doing there, guys?
Go back to staff report back to that, just a little more condensed. Here, I think you were thinking about wanting to add wording or change the wording on the purpose statement.
Yeah, I was. That I was thinking about. Your findings. I definitely want to be sympathetic to the business community.
While you were doing that, one thing that I forgot to show the commission earlier during our staff report, we meant to pull up a map of the area, so you can look at that. So you have visual optics, and I'm sorry it's not included in your packet, but you guys can see that. This is the area we're talking about. I-84 is on the bottom of your screen here. The areas that are light gray are what we're talking about. So I-84 corporate centers on the west side here. These properties are owned by the Port Authority, the airport, and then the Harlow Road properties that you heard about earlier are over here. There are a few condominiumized properties also that wasn't in part of Mr. Brown's calculation. That's why we got closer to 30. That's where we're at. But his number of 18 is actually more accurate. If you were to take the zoning off, so you can see kind of the existing conditions of it, you'll see that a good chunk of it is developed already. Again, the two that really aren't are the port properties right here, and that is, at least the last time we heard from the port, that's where the port is intending to move most of the airfield operations to the south side of the airport, so they would not be looking to sell that to private development. They would look to airfield expansion on the south side there, and then the quarter properties at I-84 corporate, right at the freeway exit right there. The last time we spoke with the real estate holding company, they were looking actually more at a commercial use in that area as opposed to a light industrial use given the freeway frontage. So, you know, the question as far as how impactful could that be, I mean, really we're talking about in most cases probably redevelopment opportunity, although there could be new development opportunity. And again, when you don't want to make decisions based on testimony of one or two businesses, again, given the small amount of businesses that are in, or properties that are in the zoning district, it almost becomes that way just out of circumstance. And we're really talking about a handful of properties here, but in one that is actually already this type of use, just a non-conformity.
Right.
Yeah, Chris, on the airport properties there's on the south side, there's a big portion of it that are wetlands and not buildable.
So on your purpose statement, right?
Back to that one second, sorry.
What you told me to do. District is primarily intended for light, clean industries, usually of a manufacturing or storage nature with limited outdoor storage. These industries usually do not require rail access and have very little process visibility. They usually create little or no air or water pollution and have few, if any, nuisance factors such as bright yard lights, continuous noise, objectable odors, or excessive outdoor accessory storage.
Or excessive outdoor accessory storage.
Mm-hmm.
And then striking through where outdoor accessory storage is currently.
Right, and we just go such as bright yard lights. Does that work?
But what does excessive mean?
Well, I'm going off of limited in the prior statement. So we're allowing limited, we're allowing small, not large.
To me, excessive is anything short of total.
Are you looking at a percentage, maybe?
Yeah, I was trying to go the other distance. Trying to put a high end on it.
That's significant.
Yeah, significant's fine. I'm not opposed. Anyone opposed to significant?
No.
Okay. That's what's great. These things get easier as it gets later.
Does that sound better, Sandy?
A little bit.
What's that?
A little bit.
Is there a way you could incorporate accessory storage into the first sentence where it says limited outdoor storage?
Outdoor accessory storage?
Yeah, you could say limited outdoor accessory storage.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that would work. Okay. Well, I tell you guys are really excited about this one. I think you're right, it could be a conditional use that could get away from us, that's a possibility. I think the only way, if we're going to allow it, would be allowing it as a conditional use. My question would be is if we're able to put enough conditions on it to cover all the concerns that we've heard this evening.
Well, let's play that out for a little bit. If let's say you did, let's say you put a significant amount of conditions beyond whatever staff suggested conditions of approval are. Because keep in mind, usually this is going to be tied with a new development application, right? So you have staff conditions of approval, which I would argue would generally be pretty high to begin with, given storage facilities and the fact that it's still an industrial property at the end of the day. And you wanted to put the additional ones. So if the applicant was aggrieved by your decision, even in the situation if they were approved for it, who do they appeal it to? They appeal it to city council. And we also know, historically at least, council has been a little less enthusiastic about these types of uses than even this body has been historically. So there's still another layer of appeal that the applicant can say, no, I don't think that was, I think this was excessive. The council can be the arbiter of that. And again, council places a lot of, an enormous amount of trust on what you're doing tonight and how you would be evaluating these applications before. I don't think the applicant would necessarily get, I wouldn't say they would get a fair hearing, but I don't think they would get a supportive one if they wanted to challenge any condition that you wanted to set forth. The risk you run is if they take it then to that next level in LUBA, and the question then becomes, are the conditions that you've placed fair, reasonable, clear, and objective? And that's really the risk you run. But that means somebody really, really wants to.
It'd be a tougher hearing, I would think.
It'd be a tougher hearing, but that also means somebody really, really, really wants to have a storage facility in that exact spot for that exact purpose. And I would argue that you probably would run into these situations, given that other communities that, as was testified earlier, are also considering these types of uses in their respective development areas.
Storage facilities.
Potentially, yeah, but they may also have situations where maybe they are less concerned with the aesthetic and visual impact or any of the other concerns you all have articulated tonight. At some point, we are a smaller town. Yes, we're part of a larger regional ecosystem. If we've made quote-unquote life too difficult for the prospective development, they might choose to go elsewhere. If a better fit for them.
sometimes. And I was gonna say, there is a need, but one of the things that is happening, there's a significant amount of inventory coming online, in the next 3 years. And so you probably will see some of this level out a little bit from what it is today.
So are we able to move on this tonight, or do you want to move it to another meeting with all the questions that are being brought up and possible amendments?
You're welcome, of course, to continue the hearing. What staff would advise, though, is you do have a pretty full docket ahead. So if you are going to do that, you may need to consider a special meeting to continue the hearing. Because the next regular meeting, we're going to be talking about housing again, and we know that'll be a fun, long topic. So,
And we can throw them all in.
so I would caution if you, and it's well within your right to do that, but,
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Mamoni.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I feel I had to say something here. And I apologize in advance because I'm not familiar with the protocol of the Planning Commission in Troutdale. So I need to preface my conversation with that. But it seems to me we are trying to make an effort or rewriting on the fly the code. It seems to me that our task this evening was extremely straightforward, extremely simple, at least the way I approached it. We were trying to, from our conversation last time, to segregate two potential uses, a storage accessory versus a storage facility. And pertinent to that scope, I think we achieved that. I think the proposal on point 126, 127 addresses every concern and achieve what we were asking last time to do with the staff. Also, to try to, concerning pertaining to the warehouse, to the fact that shall not be included under the storage facility classification. So I am extremely satisfied with that. And I think that should be all the scope and the task that the commissioner should discharge tonight. I don't think we can, and I don't think we should try to solve every potential outstanding possibility present under the sun. I don't think we should also. We cannot foresee everything. The question to me is very straightforward. It's a land use question. Now, if there is then stackable units or not stackable units or walkable units, there are other codes that approach that. But to me, the question is very straightforward, and I think we achieved that. And now I feel we are encroaching in a sphere of responsibility that are making this more of a public conversation versus a commissioner meeting or a planning commission. We're talking about everything under the sun that might be very relevant, but I don't know, not necessarily is legally or pertinent to the fundamental question that a planning commission needs to answer. And so I'm starting to have some concern about it. Also because the way it was proposed, yes, I have some question about potential use or why under conditional use, but these are preference biases that all of us come from. And so I decided that in the effort of proceed in something that is substantially satisfactory in what we were trying to achieve, again, we asked last time for a clear segregation of storage accessory, and I don't want to put words in the director's mouth, but I thought it was more like a residential single family accessory structure. And maybe Chris can give us later a practical, tangible example, versus a storage facility, which is a spread. I think we achieved that. Now, we've been spending 2 hours talking about every possible possibility, every possible option, every possible. I don't know if this going to the unbeaten path is really what the commissioner should do. The planning commission, in my mind, is a commission that has this overarching idea of this comprehensive image. We cannot really, even with good intent, foresee every possible outstanding case presented. At a certain point, there's going to be some bad responsibility. The responsibility we have is on a level of land use. Now, if it's adjacent to industrial or non-industrial, if it is stackable, if it is storing fumes and smoke, I don't think we should be concerned with it. The question, fundamental question is land use. And I think, again, and my apologies, I'm going to repeat myself for the 10 times. Point 126, point 127, and point 140, achieve exactly that. So
Okay.
I'm in favor of everything we've done so far. I'm not so sure I am in favor of this extensive conversation and also potentially request a special meeting about 2 bullets for an amendment to the code. But again, I am the last arrival. I'll follow and learn the protocol of this committee. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And just for clarification, we have had kind of an extensive discussion, and that is because the application the staff has brought forward is for a text amendment to the development code. But one of the things that has happened here, there is a particular property that this is involved with right now. And those people came and testified this evening, and that does make it relevant to the proceedings.
There's technically 3 with the nonconformity and then the 2 different properties.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why we're talking about Troutdale Storage, the Alex Mock property, and all of those, because those are the non-conforming properties, and that is part of the testimony. So that is something that we should deliberate on.
Okay, Mr. Chair, then, if I may, I agree, I concur, but I would caution about trying to, on the fly, in the middle of a meeting, try to rewrite the code. If we are not happy with what it is because we are aware through testimony of different possibility, then we should clearly say so, maybe schedule a different meeting. But to try to, on the run, in the middle of the meeting, trying to rewrite word by word, we're really splitting hair now. I don't know, I would caution probably against a different strategy. Thank you.
Okay. Well, it's been recommended that we put this to an additional meeting.
Is that a motion?
No, that was a suggestion that he made. Does anyone follow with that and want to put this to an additional meeting? Give staff a recommendation to come back with, I'm guessing.
Well, that would be my question, Mr. Chair. If you want an additional meeting, again, you're continuing the hearing.
Right.
We cannot technically change what we've already presented.
We have to change it.
You have to change it. It is in your court now. We cannot change our draft. So if you need more time on it to think about it, that's fine, but we cannot prepare any more documentation. We have done that already. We're on the clock, if you will. So if you want to have the additional meeting, that's fine. And you have the luxury that you're in the summer break, so really it doesn't affect the council calendar as far as doing that if you're intending to have it before the council meeting. And you have a lot of time to do that. But understand that the additional meeting is going to have to require your contributions and edits at that point. Staff can't really prepare anything else at this point.
Right.
Yeah, my comments weren't intended to kick the can down the road. I was hoping we could resolve this issue tonight and move it on to the city council.
Okay. But if not, you're willing to have it. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, my apologies. This is my last intervention. Are we proposing then an extension to the meeting? We're extended the meeting.
Yeah, it would basically be, we would be continuing the hearing.
Okay. Continuation to the meeting. Great, thank you.
Is that more of what you're thinking?
Yes, a continuation of the meeting. That's exactly what I was thinking. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'd love some extra time to ponder this.
Okay. So then we need to do date certain, correct?
Yeah, I mean, before you make a motion, you'll want to know what date would be available to you. Your next regular meeting is going to be on
August 19th.
August the 19th. But the concern about that date would be the city council hearing date, at least as scheduled right now, would be August 25th. That does not give you sufficient time. We need 7 days before the city council hearing to make those changes by our rules. So you're almost certainly, if you're going to try to hold on to that city council meeting date, and by the way, you would run into clock issues at that point, you're almost certainly looking to have a special meeting.
Okay.
So do we need to pick that date now?
Okay, yes.
And are there dates that are on the city calendar we need to work from?
Right, so typically, well, I'll tell you what,
Blackout.
Tuesday, the 11th is what, city council doesn't meet, they typically meet the second and fourth Tuesday, but in summer months, they only meet once a month, and they're meeting on the 25th. Tuesday, the 11th would be available, at least this room would technically be available, and city council won't be meeting. That could be a logical date for you all, and it also bases your meeting with your regular meeting by a week. But that would also need for you to be here on Tuesday, which is atypical.
Okay. So like the 11th,
The 11th.
is what you guys are thinking?
Okay.
Okay.
And just for staff, again, because we would not necessarily be preparing anything in addition, I want to make that very clear.
Correct.
Continuation of a hearing. And without risking sounding like the eighth commissioner, is there a particular reason, other than just needing to think about it more, why this meeting would, or this hearing would need to be continued?
I mean, what I want to just think about a little bit more is if there's any other way to balance the needs of some of the people who've come to talk to us with future protection.
So this would be a creative thinking time for the commission. Right?
And again, as a reminder, this is a recommendation you're giving, you're not making the final decision here too, so.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Okay. Everyone okay with that?
We need a motion.
Right. Before we go ahead with a motion. Okay, so what we'd be looking for now would be a motion on case file 7504 to continue the hearing to August 11th at 7 p.m.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we do a continuation of case file 75-04 storage facilities until Tuesday, August 11th.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, so have a motion and a second to continue the hearing on case file 7504, Development Code Text Amendment Type 4 hearing until August 11th at 7 p.m.
For the record, we would need a roll call vote.
Yeah. And is that a ring?
Yeah, Ray, are you able to provide a roll call vote for that?
Can you do that? Roll call for us,
I think you're muted, Ray.
Ms. Farrell?
I forgot to unmute myself, so I started the roll. And I
Okay.
was wondering why no one responded to me. Vice Chair Videla?
No.
Okay, Commissioner Prickett?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilcox?
Yes.
Chair Stephenson?
Yes.
Commissioner Glantz?
Yes.
Commissioner Mamoni?
Yes.
Okay, so there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yays and 1 nays and 1 absent.
Okay. So that is continued. Okay, so when this does come up on the 11th, we'd like to get through it fairly quickly if possible, so have your edits ready.
Okay, thank you.
One moment, Mr. Chair, let me get the next item on the agenda quick.
Okay. Go do this at the same time.
Well, let me pull it up here real quick, just a second. The other item on your agenda, and again, in the interest of time too, it's, I guess, at the council's discretion, commission's discretion, how you want to move this forward or maybe not, would be the idea to read through the updates to the sign code. Again, we had anticipated doing the hearing tonight, probably good that we didn't, but what we wanted to do is provide you kind of the second draft. You saw the initial draft of what we had originally meant to do with the sign code, which was pretty narrow at that point, which was to consider temporary signs and portable signs as sign permit requirements, which this commission directed staff, no, actually, that should continue. The idea of making some small changes to dimensional standards on those signs, which was okay. And then to remove the sign permit process from the development code type 1 process. That way it could run concurrent with the existing building code or other code processes, so there's not that 30-day decision, letter of application, and all the formal paperwork that's tied with that. So that was the initial step. We did incorporate the changes that you had requested, but we kept the requirements for the sign permits. But later on in that work session, you had also discussed wanting to go through a little bit more sign definitions and some standards. So we went ahead and done that for you. We can highlight it for you real quickly. If you want to defer your discussion to the 11th, since we've now created that date, you have that ability to defer further discussion. But on a high level, staff can kind of show you what we have done. One of the requests that had come out was this idea of trying to figure out a regulation for downtown. In downtown, these polar signs that are kind of these fabric signs, gosh, now I'm forgetting. Feather signs. We were not really able to find a definition of a feather sign that we felt extremely comfortable with. We also didn't want it to be misconstrued with a flag or anything like that. So we made a small edit to the flag definition where we believe we can still keep the spirit and intent of what a flag is, but by saying no, now 2 times as opposed to 3, it cannot be construed because feather signs are typically 3 or 4 times the length compared to a width. By changing the flag sign and then making it clear that anything beyond that is not permittable, that we effectively regulate out, even if we don't have a definition for it. We added a definition for inflatable sign. We added a definition for a monument sign, which a monument sign is a type of freestanding sign with the entire bottom of the sign is generally contact with the 3 feet of standard. We found that from another nearby jurisdiction. We like that definition. That's what we're going with, at least with this draft. We made a distinction. It wasn't really discussed too much, but as we were doing our research, we felt it was important, and particularly because the real estate industry pays very close attention whenever you're making changes to your sign code. We thought it was important to define what a real estate sign was. Temporary pole or wall-mounted sign that displays a property or unit within a property is for sale or lease and provides contact information for the seller or agent of the seller. That distinguishes it from different types of temporary signs, just to a degree.
You're probably wondering why that wasn't clearer in the definitions prior, right?
I'm sure there's a story behind it, but
There is, actually. We were told that that was a regulation of content. Because in order to determine that, you had to read the sign.
well, we can have that constitutional.
No, I'm just-
later. Yeah.
Just wanted to let you know we weren't,
We'll show you here in a little bit.
we were
why.
still drug-free at that time.
I understand.
Everything was good.
But we wanted to show you why we're suggesting this distinction. Temporary sign, what we did here, because there was a concern about what is a temporary sign. I'm sorry, are you able to, are you seeing my screen share here? If you're
I don't
not,
think they are.
my apologies. Let me do that real quick. What happens when you get okay, temporary sign, this is on page 10-4, if you're following along. The sign that is not permanently attached to a building that's always been there. Temporary signs include but are not limited to banner signs, lawn signs, and real estate signs, so it's described. And so temporary in this case, temporary is now considered more a duration of time rather than a regulation type. So permanent versus temporary, that's kind of the distinction we're trying to make. So several types of signs can be temporary, several types of signs can be permanent. So that's what we were trying to do, just expand and clarify that.
Can you just double check and make sure we can call out real estate without giving ourselves
We will check that.
any hot water there?
Fair to say.
Okay.
The items here in 10020, this was what you had already seen. This again basically takes out the type 1 procedure from it and allows a more direct and quicker ability to review and approve sign permits. So it doesn't take away sign permit requirements, it just takes them out of the land use review component where it's more, it takes longer in the process, quite frankly. All right, location, this is one that has come up, and you've had various applications before, and we asked them to be able to research it and offer a solution for it, so here's our suggestion for you. Right now, the way you have it is that signs have to respect whatever the building setback is for the underlying zoning district. But we have situations where the setbacks are so large that the signs are regulated by size, it actually makes it difficult to see the sign. So the suggestion we have is that all signs may be installed within a front yard or street side yard setback of the underlying zoning district, provided that the freestanding signs are not located in any public utility easements or access established on the property. We feel like that's a good compromise. Most street frontages have at least somewhere between a 5-foot to 8-foot utility easement right along the property line on the frontage, so there is then still a setback off the actual property line, but it affords a little bit more ability to shift the sign forward. And by having also that degree of a setback, in many cases that will maintain the clear vision concerns that you would have at an intersection. And actually, those have been in the sign code and still would remain in the sign code, that you cannot place a sign where you interfere with somebody's vision to safely enter or exit the property.
Clear vision is a requirement. You're probably going to die when you hear me say this. Would you consider a zero setback?
For a temporary sign, sure. For a permanent sign, that could be a little bit more problematic, but that's really not my battle to make. That between the commission and ultimately the council. Some cities, I believe Fairview has you can go right to the property line.
Right.
Other cities do whatever. We were trying to think of the situation where, okay, if I'm a business owner and I maybe don't think of these things, I place a sign because I'm told I can do it, and then the utility company comes in a couple years later and says, move this sign at your expense. Other than us providing that disclaimer, hey, you have a building to use that might be a bad look for the community.
Right. So, and some communities have, you could go up to the property line if you sign basically a document that says if they want to get in and work on the sewer line, take it or it's going to be junk.
I think the way that this is written though, Chair Saffison, is that you are able to do that with that zero setback, because you can have it within your front yard setback, so you can have it with no setback, as long as there are no outstanding easements that's on that site.
Yeah, the only one I'd be thinking of is if it's a corner lot and you were putting it on the side.
Or even if it's a business and they have an entry off the street,
Right.
that would be a hazard.
Would that be
Yeah,
correct,
the
Ms. Farrell?
Yeah, the clear vision line with that though, Commissioner Idilla, does address that for those businesses.
Right. I'm just thinking of maybe a scenario where you could put it in the side, you could be up to the property line and still meet the clear vision triangle. Maybe, maybe not, I don't know.
Well, one of the variance applications that you did review last time had a property line that was really backed off from the road because the right of way was so wide.
Yeah.
So you're right with that example. But I think the way that we've worded it, it could still capture that concern that you have.
Okay.
And before I forget, I do want to compliment Ms. Farrell and also Amber Shackelford from our office. They did a lot of code research on this, so credit should go to them too. Or Blaine, if you want to explain them.
I think we go Blaine.
There you go.
Okay.
This item right here on construction, all signs shall comply with any applicable building or electrical code. That's just kind of clean up the state structural specialty code no longer regulates signs, but certain aspects of the building code and the electrical code still do. So that's cleans up that language. And then scrolling down, forgive me for going quicker, here we go into real estate signs, and again, this is on a section for sign permit exemptions, and that's the distinction we wanted to make here, because certain temporary signs, you had indicated very clearly a preference to continue sign permit requirements for it. But in the 5 years that I've been in the city of Troutdale, I've never once been asked to permit a real estate sign, which is technically a temporary sign. So is it appropriate to consider an exemption for that particular type of sign? I understand, yes, there's a content concern, but real estate signs are prevalent everywhere. And no realtor is really going to go down to the permit office to pull a sign permit for a real estate sign. It's just not, that doesn't happen. However, you can set, though, reasonable expectations for sizing and placement and so forth, and duration. And the duration here is no different than the duration for what you have in temporary signs. So you're not treating it differently as far as its duration. But what you are saying is you're exempted from code requirements, provided you follow these three standards as lined up here. That's what we're trying to distinguish it for.
Okay.
Moving along on prohibited signs now, any sign, and again, this is kind of going back to those feather signs, any sign that moves, rotates, revolves, flaps, flutters, or stimulates animation, I don't even want to know what that is, except for flags in accordance with this chapter. So again, that's why we touched on the definition for flags, to better refine it, so you don't have these long or loosey-goosey flags, let alone anything that can be a vertical flag and construed as a feather sign. That's why we made that definition change, and that's why we added that exemption, or that prohibition rather, in here.
Are we just breezing over this tonight?
I'm breezing through it, and you guys can chew on it, and we can have it back on the agenda for your August meeting.
Okay.
Temporary signs, that was another thing.
Better.
Temporary signs, one of the big concerns from last time too was we had not ever really placed, previous code had, and then when we updated the code in 2017, there was never a clear time frame for what how long a temporary sign could be, other than the fact that it has to be removed 14 days from the event, sale, yada, yada, that. This is just something we're proposing. We're not necessarily married to this concept, but we've seen it in other communities, this idea of temporary signs being valid for a 30-day period, consecutive day period from approval. It still has to be removed within 14 days after whatever. And then a property cannot have more than 4 temporary sign permits issued within a calendar year. So that limits not just the duration of how long a sign can be up, but the property owner cannot just put it up and do it every month. There has to be a break, and you cannot have an extension of a temporary sign permit. At that point, then it becomes more of a permanent sign. So that was the intent there. Again, staff is not married to the time numbers that we've given, and that's for you all to chew on potentially.
I would say in a normal, non-COVID situation that, 4 months is probably ample for a year.
Yeah.
For a temporary sign.
Well, it's also seasonally related too,
Exactly.
Christmas.
Chris, you're muted.
Chris, you're still muted.
You're still muted, Chris.
Both of you guys are muted. In the Kellogg room. You're all muted.
Are we the only? Oh dear.
I'll text him.
Okay. Thanks.
I'm still here. I can hear you.
I'm sure it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
know.
Very animated.
I just.
If we all keep waving. Okay.
Hey, you guys are muted. Okay, bye.
Maybe this is one of those, oops, I kicked the cable.
Yeah, maybe the telephone that's attached to the room. There's usually one connection in there that they're probably not, it's not connected anymore for some reason. It hung up.
Silent movies.
Can you guys hear me okay without an echo?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm going to speak from my laptop. I guess we lost our reception here with the phone. I don't know what happened. My apologies. Can somebody let me know the last thing they heard?
I think it was around 10.0440, about just after temporary signs, and in 4 months.
Running into the same issue we had last night. If you all can hear us, I think what we're running into the same Zoom issue where the meeting is now about to conclude because of timing. What we will do, and Mr. Chair, I'll turn to you. You have the packet of information if you can still hear me. We can either try to reconvene this meeting here in 5 minutes, or if you feel like you have enough to look at from this packet that we can continue and pick up this conversation on August 11th. Whatever you would like to do. This is.
And it's also not a hearing.
not reconvene, or do you want to reconvene?
Now, let's just,
We
let's.
can't hear you folks.
Yeah, or yeah.
Thumbs up for reconvening or continuing this conversation on August 11th,
Keep going.
or thumbs
Oh.
down if you wish to keep going.
I got 2 thumbs down.
Reconvene.
Thumbs up or thumbs down.
2, 3,
That means we keep going?
4. Okay. We're done.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. If thumbs down meant done, then we'll be done.
Yes.
Okay.
We're adjourned.
All right. As a reminder, your next meeting is now Tuesday, August the 11th. And then your next regular meeting will be on Wednesday, August 19th. That will be a reconstitution of the Housing Committee, where we will talk about the housing strategies that need to still be put in the comp plan. You'll have a future comp plan amendment in the fall. And apologies that we ran out of time, I guess, with Zoom. This happened last night at council as well. We'll try to figure out what's going on, but other than that, we have nothing further.
And you probably didn't pay their Zoom bill.
I haven't had it, you guys can hear.
Okay, with that, if we all can't see and hear, we will call it an evening, and we will see you on the 11th. Thank you for your time and your dedication. We'll see you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody got
Thank you, Randy.
Thanks. Have a good night, guys.
You too.